All interviewers have their own style, and my style is to try to get to the point and to be intensely curious. And the key to interviewing is listening.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth, because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to our Sunday sit-down. Today is going to be part 2 of our interview with Tim Kennedy, and while the first part of it was a little bit awkward because he was sitting in a vehicle with no air conditioning running in the Texas heat, we found out that he was only about 12 minutes down the road from where I live, and so he decided to come and stop into the studio and do it in person. And there's something to be said about an in-person interview. It's a little bit different. Today is going to be kind of fun. It's less of an interview and maybe more of a discussion, because Tim and I do not hold the same views about what's going on in the Trump administration and some of the folks that are out there doing it. I think that we both agree that there are wins. I think we agree a lot on principles, but we disagree about how to get it done. So you're going to hear some of that. I think it's polite pushback, and I hope that's interesting to you guys. I think we should all be able to defend our positions. We should do it respectfully. And at the end of it, we should be able to walk away and shake hands as friends or take a hug and send somebody out the door and thank them for coming along. So that's what today's program is about. Both of us have an affiliation with the folks over at My Patriot Supply, and they're the ones that bring you today's Sunday sit down. Again, part 2 of our Tim Kennedy little experience here. We'll just bring it up right now. There it is. It's mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Right now, they're doing deals on the Grid Doctor 3300 solar generator. I'm about to get one of these in the studio as our backup, because probably of you guys know the same way I do. Power tends to go out right when you need it, like maybe when you need to go live with a podcast. I do not want that to happen for us. So whether it's a heat wave or a thunderstorm, whether it's too many people running air conditioning in my little area in Texas, or maybe you live in California, God forbid, and your grid can't keep up with it, we're going to be getting the Grid Doctor 3300 solar generator from My Patriot Supply to back up the Kyle Seraphin show right here. It's an absolute beast with 3,300 watts of off-grid power. It can keep a fridge, freezer, lights, medical devices, your washer, your dryer, your whole RV out of a 30 amp, or all the lights and all of the equipment in this heavy-duty computer system that we have that runs the podcast. You can plug it all in there and make it work when you need it to. Right now, they got a crazy deal going on. If you buy the Grid Doctor 3300, they're going to throw in 2 waterproof 200-watt solar panels. You'll get them completely free along with the deal. They're not cheap plastic panels. They're super durable, waterproof, built to handle storms and heat and who knows what else is coming your way. Check them out at mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Claim your free panels today with that Grid Doctor 3300. There was never a better time to get serious about blackout protection and keeping the power on where you are than it is right now. mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Again, it's mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. There is a link in the show description as well as to all the things about Tim Kennedy if you guys want to get that done and follow him. And let's get into that discussion right about now.
All right, I like it. We're in light and dark. You're the first person to use that microphone, so
nice.
Be gentle with her.
I'm going to deep throat this. Let's just see if I... What's up, dude? Nice boots.
Thanks. Yeah. All right, so fun story. My last partner in the FBI was a 5th group guy who then got out and went to 19th.
They're the only real group. I don't know if you know that.
Is that the answer?
Yeah. We're to a 5th group guy.
To a 5th.
Like everybody else is just like kind of Green Berets.
Right.
But like if you're from the Legion, if you are 5th group,
that's where
it's a different thing. Yeah. So as a 7th grouper, like we actually never had any real deployments.
So my buddy has the most unfortunate name, which I will not say while we're recording, but I'll tell you afterwards. And going through the Q course was brutal from what I can tell.
Yeah.
He had just one of those special names where apparently Cadre was like, is someone fucking, pranking me with this name?
They want
that. He's a stud, by the way.
They do. And thank God for that.
Yeah. Super stud.
Short, tall, young, old, unique name. You're just going to get brutalized.
Right. You can't be a gray man if you have a last name like he does and a first name, which no one's ever heard before, but sounds like something that would happen to you if you were running in like, let's say, wet shorts.
Oh, sick.
It's not good.
No.
And your last name sounds something like a phallic device. Yeah, you're in bad shape. So,
thank you for the coffee.
Yeah, my pleasure. So these boots, I bought them because I was working on a res. I went into a store, a little mercantile place in Las Cruces. I'm doing FBI stuff. I'm like, I'm on a res. I'm wearing a white hat so people know who I am.
Yeah.
I'm just rolling out there and I'm wearing boots every day because I'm in New Mexico. I'm from Texas. That's how we're going to roll.
Indian reservations break my heart.
They're the worst places in America.
And people don't understand when we say the worst, there's bad places all over America.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like go to Baltimore, you know, like see some
It's
real.
almost the same though, in a lot of ways. It's
worse.
Problem.
It's worse.
It's the same problem though.
But at a scale that and per capita, way worse.
Right.
The poverty level, the human trafficking, the drugs, the criminal activity.
It's hopeless too.
It's just so hard.
Which you said something about, was it Creek? Is that, do you live near a res at some point?
Yeah, I had.
Which one?
Well, when during my fight camps, I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So like plenty of them
I was
around.
at Kirtland for 2 years. So.
Oh, there you go. That sadness everywhere you look.
You guys doing the fight camps were the people that we would do in briefings on. We're like, look, you're going to go out in the street. You're going to think you're hot shit because you're going through a PJ training.
Yeah.
You think you're a stud. And there's going to be a guy with cauliflower ear that's going to just be waiting to take you apart on the streets.
Yeah.
Will you please not act like a fool? When you're,
Just be chill.
just remember you're in the Air Force.
I
Guys.
came with the Air Force.
Just remember.
I just came from boxing with my 10-year-old, and we had that exact same conversation because he's like, yeah, I'm a boxer now. I'm like, dude, you're 10. And I'm like, can you fight? He's like, yeah, I can fight. I'm like, no, you can't fight. Like, you just say that. I cannot fight. He's like, I know, like 1, 2, 3, like my jab cross. I'm like, listen to me. You know nothing about fighting, and you're going to think that you do. And the most dangerous thing in the world is somebody that thinks that they know how to fight, and then they fight somebody that can actually fight.
It's the Dunning-Kruger curve. Like you have some familiarity, so suddenly you think you know some things, and you are the most dangerous person, mostly to yourself.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me over. I'm glad I'm not sitting in a hot Ford F-150.
Dude, that seemed like that was a
that was brutal. Could you see the sweat like running down the side of my?
It looked like the good news is that you just finished working out, so like you were still keeping that.
Yeah, the core body temperature was going. Then I'm in Texas, and
there was no air conditioning running.
No, I left it off because I cared about audio.
Which is why I dicked it up.
Yeah, sorry about
Perfect. All right. We were going to get into something fun, I think.
Yep.
And I want to have a polite, maybe disagreement.
Yeah.
And so I want to mostly hear your opinion. I think my audience mostly knows what I think. I want to hear your opinion, and I'm not going to push back on it specifically.
But we can.
But what I'll do is I'll introduce questions to you, if that's good with you, because I want to set kind of the parameters on it. I think that's what we've lost in this society is like, can we politely disagree about things?
Discourse is a lost art, apparently.
Yeah. We need monopoly on single feelings. We need to have like our opinions issued to us. So you believed, and we're actually kind of in a good spot. Did you see the Fox and Friends interview that happened this morning with Bongino?
No.
Great. Did you see the Patel interview that went on with Brett Baer last night?
No.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to give you some of the stuff from it.
Okay.
And these are not gotchas. I just want to kind of like, the first thing that was brought up that made me uncomfortable is this ongoing discussion about a new facility. And the reason why, and there's a guy named Mike Howell over at the Oversight Project, it's like an extension of Heritage, they've highlighted that every FBI director has come in and used the exact same words about a new FBI building. And now Kash Patel is using those exact same words that we heard Wray and Comey, and I'm sure if McCabe was asked about it, same deal.
Yeah.
And so these fall into this sort of like evidence to me that we're seeing the worst thing that I actually warned Kash about early, which is that the FBI tries to run the director. The director rarely gets to run the FBI.
And I agree with that.
Okay.
And that's a problem of a system. And what we have is, and this goes across the National Intelligence Committees, the commissions, the Director of National Intelligence. She's fighting systems.
Yep.
And what obviously, president gets elected overwhelmingly in November.
Mm-hmm.
He then picks his cabinet. Those people go through the first crucible, which is confirmation. And they, at that point, have to start towing a line. They take what were really strong opinions and they have to make compromises publicly to ultimately accumulate enough votes for them to get confirmed.
Right.
And if you're saying, I'm going to shut down the Hoover building, you're not going to get confirmed.
Right. Now, I took that as hyperbole.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who's thinking and sane, a regular person would hear that and go, the dude's not going to walk in and shutter the place where several thousand people work every day. That's not reasonable.
Well, first of all, I voted for that.
I mean, I did too.
Yeah.
But I voted for the spirit of that, maybe not the letter of that.
Yep.
Is that fair?
100%. So when you have this tiny little percentage, less than 1% of these appointed, now confirmed people trying to fight against tens of thousands of well-positioned with way better access, much more control. They're fighting against a stream that ultimately controls the vast majority of the levers that make things happen. And you're like, well, how is that possible? Like it says secretary or director in front of their name. Like, how do they not have the authority? Well, they do have the authority. They just don't have the leverage. And
I would also say they don't have the attention span because no one does.
Yeah.
Like it's like saying the president runs the country and you're going to, for me, and I always use this analogy, it's like, okay, are you trying to tell me that Donald Trump is responsible for what a base commander is doing in fill in the blank, like in Omaha, Nebraska? Yeah. And the answer is like, that's the equivalent of thinking the CEO is telling the Walmart greeter how to behave.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so much distance even between your high level people.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Time and distance and space and that game of telephone, like this is the mission. And by the time it gets down and everybody adds their little sauce to it, it ends up being something completely different. So I get that that's not
and in this
reasonable.
Idea of a decentralized command, you have ultimately the executive who picks his people. Those people are supposed to be in line with a vision, and they're supposed to be executing this as to the best of their resources and abilities. Then here's the problem. And I hate like saying swamp but it really does exist.
Sure.
And in every single organization and every single agency, it is in their best interest to resist any form of change, because that conflict, that friction, those changes put everything that they have and the money that they make and the influence that they have and the power that they have in jeopardy. And DC is it's addictive. These people get obsessed.
So that's the thing that I think is the most dangerous.
Yeah.
It's that people, I would call it buying your own hype or, eating your own cooking or whatever you want to call it. But the idea that you might look and say, these people really like me.
Yeah.
When they're really actually evil. They don't like anybody. They only like themselves.
And their power and their clout. Then how do we reconcile with real world operations, real world investigations, and current rule of law? Mm-hmm. So we could pick almost any issue, whether it's like just release a file. Well, some of those things you can't just do.
Sure.
The FBI has to be asked by Congress in some instances to release certain things, and some things they can't if there's an ongoing investigation, like whether it's a FOIA thing that they won't be able to if it's going to put individual Americans, their information at risk,
right? Make
them vulnerable, an operation or investigation that's ongoing. And none of these are closed cases. And I want to see people tarred and feathered in the street that had anything to do with Epstein, that had anything to do with P. Diddy, that had anything to do with January 6th. But how do you do that with rule of law? Because if we just say, okay, fine, we're going to break the law and we're going to start throwing information out there, we're going to start releasing names, we're going to start releasing files, well, we're breaking law and precedent. And now we're no better than what was. We're just on the other side of it. And I want us to be better than that, because I'm first and foremost a constitutionalist.
Yeah. I have no disagreement with any of that. In fact, I don't need to see files, and I never have. I mean, it's a touch button for people, I think, on the right now. It's like, where are the so-and-so files? It's like, what are you going to do with them? Like I was a criminal investigator. Yeah. I know that I'm not going to do anything because people will send me stuff. They probably send you stuff too. They're like, hey, Tim, investigate this.
Yeah.
And you're like, with what resources? Yeah. Like, I have no database access. I don't have any sort of authority to demand documents. I don't have the ability to research your claim or investigate your claim. So I don't need
I want the
list.
Like the court of public opinion. I want these people humiliated forever. I want them to never have another job in Hollywood again. Mm-hmm. I want them never to get another sponsorship. I never want them to, man, you touched a kid, you're done for forever.
Right. But do it with an indictment for me. Like, I don't need to see your name on a list.
Both.
Yeah. Well, that's fair too. But listen, every indictment is going to eventually be unsealed.
Like, you know what happens to these people in prisons?
Yeah. They don't do well.
Yeah. I want that.
Yeah.
And on their way to that, I want them to be politically humiliated.
Sure.
Like, they're so pretty. They're so untouchable. Like they had how many blockbuster hits? Awesome. It disgusts me. Mm-hmm. Deal with the public humiliation and then enjoy prison with a bunch
of drop from the feeling of I'm on top of the world to being nowhere, and then go and actually find out what nowhere really looks like, where someone tells you your every move.
You buried information about cocaine in the White House. Whoever was involved in that needs to be held accountable.
Sure.
Whatever informants were part of the January 6th debacle, they need to be held accountable.
So here's where I'm gonna challenge you a little bit.
Okay.
I think one of the problems, I think you're not ignorant to this problem. I think the issue that exists is that you are now dealing with a culture that wants to enforce the status quo, that needs to protect itself, right?
Yeah.
So that's DOJ wide. That's FBI wide, specifically in that little space. It's actually in everything over at ODNI. I've had people tell me that it's as bad as like, yeah, feel free to move wherever you want. It's as
now,
bad as,
now I can see you.
it's as bad as 80% that are fighting against what Tulsi Gabbard's initiatives are. So 20% of people might be on board and 80% are pushing against it in any way they can. And they don't want anything to do with it. So
95%.
yeah, I think the penetration is very high, especially when you start getting into more senior levels.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, I listened to Dan Bongino say for years, personnel is policy, which I believe. There's two ways that this thing needed to be approached, in my opinion, something I shared with Cash and that I was really hopeful that he was kind of understanding. Thing number one, this is a corporate hostile takeover. This is a scenario where you have a business, right? The United States government business that has deliverables that they're supposed to give us and they haven't been, and they've been lying to the shareholders, us. And so they've been screwing us on that end. So that's your personnel issue. But it's like a beach landing. You've got to take sand before you can take terra firma, before you can take back any piece of that country, because these people are they're entrenched, as you mentioned. They have well-positioned and very well thought out defenses, and they have a vested interest in you not doing the thing that you came to do. Yeah. Would you agree with all those things?
Yep.
So you're fighting a two-front war, and you can't fight indictments up front. Like that takes time. And I know that more than most people. And you can't do a lot of this other stuff where it's like, release the names, give us the files, show us the video. It's like, what are you going to do with that? Nothing. Yeah. Who cares? Take your time, do those properly, 100%, follow the procedure. Don't screw up the prosecution because of public opinion. Yeah. But you can fire every single person over a GS-15 and every single SES are there, or you can put them on a unpaid or paid leave status and move them to Puerto Rico.
You can't.
Why not?
I don't even know. Well, just to make it simple so people can, we take what is a really important utility of a small government, a fire department in Liberty Hill. Okay, we're right here.
Yep.
If we went there and we said, okay, the low-level firefighter, you get to stay. Firefighter, EMT, paramedic, you guys get to stay.
Yep.
Captain and beyond and above, which is effectively what the equivalence is. Yeah. You guys are all frozen. Mm-hmm. Like you guys can't come to work.
We're shipping you down to Travis County where you can't do any damage.
Yeah. And we're going to do some backgrounds on you, maybe some polygraphs. We're going to dig into some of your emails. All of your emails are not yours. That's the American government's. Yep. And we get to look at them. None of it's privacy. And then a fire happens in Liberty Hill and a kid burns alive.
Yep.
There's no way that the people of Liberty Hill are going to be like, this was a good idea.
Okay, so now we're not talking about whether or not this is a solution. It's whether or not you can take the fallout if something bad were to happen. Is that
partial the fallout? But we share values. I think most of them, and as much as I want due process and justice and transparency and radical change within these organizations to include the Bureau, the fallout is one piece of it, not just the PR of it, but more importantly, the consequence in the scales of justice, us solving this systematic problem, the process that is broken within this organization, to the fallout morally and ethically of what could or would, and I think you would agree, would happen.
I'm gonna give you some concrete examples of something why I think it wouldn't. And it's really dark.
Okay, I like dark. But in this example, those firefighters are not going to know how to pay for filling up that truck. That's the captain's job.
Sure.
Right? And not even the chief's job, but like one pay grade above the captain, the guy that's going to pay to keep the lights on in the fire department.
Sure.
And then those are things that are echelon above just the operator level. And that's one fire But if we look at the national scale of an organization like the Bureau with HRT that's doing counterterrorism,
Right.
hostage rescue, that's working on Indian, like how many Indian girls have to disappear, or how many terrorists have to successfully.
There's a couple of pieces on there that are one of the things the FBI has done since Hoover very, very well is sell the myth of the FBI. And no one knows that better than people who have been in the FBI. So I'm gonna share with you a couple things, and we'll see if it shifts any of your opinion. Number one, when we had the COVID insanity, which I could not stand, and
Fear-based absolute.
Yep,
crazy.
exactly what we're talking about. Living without fear. Some people did. And one of the ways you did it was by looking around going, these numbers don't make any sense. I've seen how long it takes to get death statistics. I worked in an ER, if you have some experience in life, and then you're like, they're running a ticker on Fox News and CNN of how many people in America have died.
Yeah.
You're going, there's no way that's legit. That's not real.
My brother's a deputy, a sheriff, and I'm not to throw him under the bus, but he was also as a homicide investigator. He is the senior ranking guy for the detectives and the investigators. He had to sign with the morgue cause of death for the county. And he'd be like, homeboy got hit by a truck. Why does it say COVID death?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, he had COVID. They tested for him at the hospital. I'm like,
right.
He
The
was
stuff that we actually heard about.
crossing the highway and he got hit by, what are you talking about?
Right.
And here's all the numbers.
It's death with COVID versus death from COVID.
Yeah, but those numbers are the same.
Yeah, they're the same. So we saw that.
Yeah.
One thing that happened and does happen in an institution that's captured by sort of a leftist ideology is that you get this group of people that are going to 100% get on board with the fear. And they're probably not very fit, and they're probably not very self-sustaining, and they can't go without a paycheck. So they're going to do whatever they're told. And the wildest piece, I guess, is that the FBI shut down, including the National Security Mission, for a lot of field offices, including Washington, D.C., and nobody knows. But they shut down to the point where counterterrorism agents who worked every single day in a skiff, and theoretically the guys that are making sure D.C. and New York don't go boom, which is what I heard in an interview the other day, and I went like, they told you that, and that sounds real, until you actually worked in that skiff or until you worked in that office and found out that nobody else was there. And they were scheduling 30 minutes. Tim, this is a legit number. 30 minutes twice a week. Come in and check your emails. Don't be in the same space as anybody else.
So this is during COVID, right?
For 9 months to 18 months.
Yeah.
To the point where they started outsourcing all of these emails because they couldn't send them to the secure side. They're sending them out in, and I actually ended up leaking some of them because they were so embarrassing how stupid they were. It was like, people, it was a drunken wine blog for like a mom. And she was putting it like she was the senior HR official at one point in time. And she was hitting up like thousands of employees talking about what her daughter's doing at cheerleading camp with a mask on. And you're going like, what? But these people were not going to work.
Yeah.
So the counterintelligence mission was analyzed in Washington, D.C., where you'd think it's like probably the number 2 CI mission in the country. New York is considered the most important for some reason. They have all the consulates. Anyway, they fight back. New York and Washington are always fighting. When they did the analysis, my buddy was in the skiff when he got briefed. They did the analysis of like, let's say 1,500 cases. It's 100 agents working an average of 12 to 15 cases. There were only 2 that required daily updates. So the idea that there's this sensitive, like world-changing mission that's going to happen in the CT space or in the CI space, it's mostly FBI myth being sold. That's my position from working with these guys.
I mean, that's a data set from a frozen world. Like in a President Trump world.
Isn't that when you'd want to do something though?
No.
No?
No, nobody was doing anything. Like during this overseas, we saw lots of turmoil, being Russia going into Ukraine. We saw Taliban taking over Afghanistan.
Right.
We saw the cartels effectively doing all human trafficking, drug smuggling.
We also
along
saw
the Horn.
Antifa take over Portland. We saw
Without a doubt.
So all of this stuff was actually happening in the United States. Also, DC got overrun in June that year.
Yeah.
And the White House, they drove into the bunker during that time.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a degree of complicitness in some of those things.
Oh, the overseas influence. I'm
Yeah.
almost certain of that.
Yeah. But now, and I obviously I've never been to the Bureau. I don't speak for the Bureau,
Sure.
and I'm just speaking from my opinion, from my friends. And I do think that they have a really important mission, being what is supposed to be the premier law enforcement agency in the United States, and being responsible for the vast majority of the most important forms of enforcement that can't be done by local municipals, being cities, counties, states. That I would rather err on the side of caution and not back to my fire and the Liberty Hill example.
Sure.
Because I think that we're more vulnerable now than we've ever been as infrastructure of a country, and what is systems that are poised to collapse. If some of these things do collapse, if Director Patel comes in and says, GS from this level and above, you guys got to walk, hands off your computers, we'll go through everything. That is the opportunity and the trigger for every single one of our adversaries to kick off the millions, tens of millions of people that have come to this country, not most of which, that's a large percentage of are dangerous anti-American operatives.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a large volume without it being a large percentage. I think we can agree on that, right? Like you could have tens of thousands of bad actors and it still is not the majority of people. So I know what you're saying.
I don't know.
But is that not just what the FBI wants you to believe? Is there a possibility?
Not FBI. Like I don't care what the FBI wants.
Because they definitely don't want to have the GS-15 and above put on standby and sent to Puerto Rico the way that Kyle Seraphin wants them to go.
I like by no means am I like trying to defend a government that I want to see shrunk down to about 10% of its current size.
Sure. Okay, we agree on that.
Yeah.
Easy.
Like this, I'm hardcore into this, but how do I do that?
Let me throw an idea to you.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
So we spend $11 billion on the FBI. I don't know what we spend on the DOJ. I should know off the top of my head, but it's more than that, right? And then you've got other money that's thrown into DEA. You've got other money into ATF, which we should get rid of altogether. There's a lot of money. There's
abolish
tens of billions of dollars.
You could almost say any agency name right now and like abolish,
right?
Come back.
Like Department of Commerce.
Yeah.
Don't need it. Yeah.
Department of Education.
Don't need it. Yeah. Exactly. We can kick all these things because I don't want them.
Yeah, we went to President Malay, just be like, afuerta.
Yeah, afuerta, all of it. Yeah, rip it off the wall, throw it on the ground. But if you wanted to do that and you wanted to know a plan, because everybody's like, oh, well, like what's the problem? Problem's easy to diagnose. Anybody can call it out. Nobody cares if you can call out the problem. I want to know a solution. The solution looks like this. That money can be reallocated by population to the states. Okay? You're still going to have a DOJ of prosecutors because you're still going to need federal prosecutors that have the authority, the supremacy clause, and they have a constitutional duty to go out there and go after interstate commerce and the other things, which, by the way, is way too big. Do you know that the FBI can pick up a gun case because some dude like runs around with a gun and they go, well, that gun wasn't made in Texas. And because it was sold from out of state, like it was made in Smyrna, Georgia or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that Glock is interstate commerce. That's the FBI's nexus. I'm not even exaggerating. That's literally what the affidavit will say to make a gun case, a federal case, is that it came from out of state. That's not good. And if they can't do it, they'll do it off the ammo. And they're like, that ammo came from Idaho. Like it's federal, like blah, 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 or that's CCI or whatever. So they'll do that. So my proposition would be, and this is radical, and this is like pie in the sky. This is not real today because no one's going to do this because it's too sensible. You take all the billions of dollars you have, you allocate it by population set, you send it out there. Then we have the thing that I want most, more local control, decentralized from DC, more controlled by the individual states, and 9th and 10th Amendment type stuff. You get your senior, you can set up the criteria, each state can do it. 10 years as a state patrol officer or as a senior deputy or as somebody who's an experienced patrol guy. And they can apply to be part of the federal task force, which would be deputized under 18 USC and Title 21. So they have two options to be able to enforce drugs or everything else. And when they do, they're answerable in theory to state policy, a state attorney general, which has an election, and some sort of local group, but they go over and they get title. They both have local authorities. And that's really strong because federal agents can't pull people over. Yeah. They can't do vehicle stops. They can't do probable cause searches, even though they theoretically can. If you ever do a probable cause search, like on somebody or a Terry stop, you're going to not have that job or you're going to find yourself in charge of a broom closet because they won't let you do it. So you get people who have actually spent time on the street doing real cop work and then let them be senior investigators. And they've already been vetted for like a decade to know that they know what's going on and they haven't had like all the infractions. And you pay that money with federal dollars and then they can still bring it. And by the way, we already have this model because they're called federal task forces. We do it with HIDA and we do it with JTTF and take your pick. We get local officers and state officers all the time into the federal space to go bring prosecutions. And if they can't take it to the federal, they can still take it to the state.
Yeah.
And you got the same guy doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it is a cool, radical idea. And it does definitely give the preponderance power back to the small local government, which is, I think, something that we do agree on. This house of cards that a lot of these agencies, and specifically when it comes to the vulnerable national strategic problems, that is the Tulsi Gabbard problem, the Joe Kent problem, the Sebastian Gorka problem, the Kash Patel problem, the Pam Bondi problem, Pete Hegseth problem.
Sure.
These people are not my best friends, but I know them pretty well. And Secretary Hegseth, Director Gabbard, I trust these. It's hard for me, like, Secretary Hegseth, not Pete. Secretary, I'm still in the military, so like Secretary Hegseth.
Yeah, I get you.
And not Tulsi, but Director Gabbard.
That's right. I saw that calculation.
Yeah, sorry.
I think everybody else saw too. I saw the gears grind.
I really trust these people. And I know that Hegseth is trying to keep a Department of Defense operating, because if we don't, China, Russia, Iran, our cartels, they're just sitting there waiting. And I'm pivoting to DOD because that house of cards, he's walking a tightrope with, like, I want to do all of these changes, which are over here. Here are the things that are keeping this, and I can only take one or two things off at a time to stay in balance, to not let it fall apart.
I agree with all those. I don't think there's any, I don't fault what's going on. I always look at the DOD as like being the watchtower, the sentry that's looking outward, right? I mean, that's where the mission is. It's outside of the United States generally. And then your DOJ is theoretically looking inward, policing our population. Theoretically, they get over their skis and send people to go where they don't need to be. But I agree with you on the DOD thing.
Like Don Bongino, Kash Patel, are they compromised intellectually?
I don't think so. So I don't have to make that.
It's been 90 days, right?
Yeah, I don't make the argument that these guys have bad motives or that they have bad ideas or that they're nefarious actors. I wouldn't do that.
Are they smart people?
Generally,
we're
all, but I think we're all vulnerable to one. Really, this is the biggest vulnerability. Have you ever been part of a team where everybody hated you?
Mm-hmm.
Like I sort of instinctively know that's been a thing you've done. You're a high achiever, you're outspoken, you're charismatic, like you've got a big personality, you fill up a room. Some people hate that.
Yeah.
And when you go into a place where you're hated, it doesn't feel good.
No.
And so if there was a way that you could ameliorate that problem, you might, especially if you didn't think it was much of a compromise. And if it was presented to you as a win, that's a real big danger in a place where,
without a doubt.
Dan said it this morning while he went on Fox and Friends. He said, when we got into the office, we had people that came up and touched my arm and said, thank God you're here. We have all these things we need to show you. You cannot make the argument that agency, which is only interested in self-preservation and full of corrupt and nefarious actors that need to self-preserve, you can't tell me those people don't know how to go up there and win somebody over that might be the one that puts their head on the
have been professionally trained their whole entire life to manipulate people to get what they want.
We're talking about source recruiting.
Absolutely.
That's the goal.
In national intelligence, at the agency,
at
the Department of Justice.
Do you know who gets like the vast majority of people that make it into the senior rank of the FBI? So this is your 15s, but generally speaking, your SES that's going to be filling up your 7th floor, your executives. They come out of national security backgrounds. Yeah. And you know why?
Because they're good at manipulating people.
They've got all the time to write their resume up because they're not running down bad guys. Like the people that are working criminal cases are working criminal cases and they don't promote because that's why they're there. The people that want to promote, they find themselves one case, and we saw this over and over again. They brief that case. Dan called them briefers. There's a name for it in every agency. The FBI, like my buddies and I, we would see something and somebody would go like, well, we just did this thing. And my buddy would look at me, and he was a former smoke jumper and a Marine and, like nose to the grindstone kind of guy. And he was like, yeah, that probably briefs really well.
Yeah.
And I bet it does.
Yeah.
And that's how you get promoted. Those are the people that they're surrounded with.
Yeah.
So you don't have to impugn their honor or their motives. And I don't, lest anyone think otherwise. But I do think it's easy to get compromised. Like your mission can be compromised without your principles. And you think you're actually doing a good job because people sell you. That's what their job is.
And to not be, that Monday morning quarterback, because I'm not in their shoes. But what I'm going to have to defer to is a little bit of faith and trust in the person. And when we look at the cabinet picks, when we look at the Director Patels and we look at the Sebastian Gorkas and the Tulsi Gabbards and the Hegseths and the Joe Kents, like look at Joe Kent, the dude's 5th Special Forces Group, like right, like the only one that matters, right?
Real deal. From what I hear,
right? And then
there's a rumor
goes to the agency and is an Killer Kent. His name was Killer Kent, and now he's sitting.
They just give that out to everybody.
Yeah, it's totally.
Yeah.
Sitting at the head of one of the most important, counterterrorism decision-making positions. That's the dream team. And the RFKs and the Dr. Oz's. I don't think they all got compromised in 90 days, but none of the things that I want to happen have happened fast enough. And I can be sharpshooting, like, why didn't they do this? Well, you had a great idea. It's a radical idea. Why didn't Cash do that? Why didn't Pam Bondi do that?
I don't think anybody was going to do that for
Right,
whatever
but-
it's worth.
and
It's
they
just a good
can't.
idea. They can't. But what I did see is I see examples of where it can be done quickly.
I know, but confirmation bias, as you know, in investigation is one of the most dangerous things where, like, I'm looking for examples that support an idea that they have been captured, they have been out leveraged, they are being manipulated. And I
want to see examples where we're winning. And I do see some examples of that. So, for
I see
example,
a ton of them.
yeah. So Treasury, Scott Bessent seems to be killing it. He brought people back. He took whistleblowers that were getting, and he said, you went and screwed those guys' life over.
Yeah.
I want you in charge of something. I'm going to scare the shit out of these bad guys. We're going to put them in
RFK.
charge. RFK keeps doing it too.
Tons of wins.
So here's what I see. And I think Secretary Hegseth has done the same thing in the areas where he's able to win.
Yeah.
Like you said, one balancing act that's a tightrope.
A dangerous one that if we fall out, Iran has another October 7th.
Yeah, for sure.
That's going to be at our border.
Significant vulnerabilities if you screw it up. And yet, I see people in the media crying about some people and not crying about other people. And I always kind of go by the same attitude that the enemy will tell you where you are weak and where they are strong, and they will tell you where they are getting injured and where you are not doing any damage. And if they're crying about people, and you mentioned people that they're upset about, I see that.
Yeah.
I see Harmeet Dillon show up to DOJ, and 100 people quit the same week that she's there because she came in and said firearms are a civil liberty, and the Second Amendment is a civil rights thing that we're going to defend in this department.
Yeah.
And people went like, "I'm out. I'm popping smoke.
Cool.
I've been doing
Bye,
this for."
Felicia.
Yeah, exactly. Like good riddance. And yet, that's tangible. You came in and set down. She laid down the law. She said what she was going to do, and you're winning.
Yeah.
And she's not the senior person. She's not Pam Bondi. That's not a comfortable chair, is it?
That's fine. It's more, I was like, I just got done working out. My legs are trashed. And I'm still busted from Murph.
So people understand, like you came in and you said, "Hey, what's going on?" And then you dropped trow in my kitchen.
That's correct.
Within about 90 seconds.
I put my gun on your counter and can I leave this here? And I took my workout shorts off and I put pants on. So I didn't sit here with like,
it felt right.
Short origin shorts.
That would have been okay too.
Okay.
We have a female audience. It's not the majority of it, but there's some that
would be like, those are gross legs. Cover that hair.
They would be excited.
Okay. So we're agreeing on almost everything. It's about almost the why we're agreeing on, the end state we're agreeing on. It's currently like we're sharpshooting a process.
Yeah.
Like, how are they going about this?
And I think my real worry is that because of the process, we're not going to end up at the end state. And
I hear you there.
And here's my biggest challenge. If you were going into a country you hadn't been into before,
scorched earth,
or you hadn't been there in a long time. Okay. And you're going to take a team and you're going to go win hearts and minds, and you're going to do what SF guys do. You're going to take a small group of your guys and you're going to take a nation back by using indige forces. Do you want a local tour guide that you can trust?
No.
None?
Yeah, of course.
You want someone that knows the ground, right?
Yeah.
Like you need somebody that has like ground truth from the area.
That person's really dangerous.
Yeah. Like you need to know the lay of the land so you know who's the snake and who's the one that's selling you. You need to know that guy just shook hands with you and promised you something, but he promised somebody else something the night before because that's how he operates. And by the way, the last 3 guys he shook hands with got killed and they got dragged off in the dark and they were never heard from again. You'd want to know that.
Yeah.
So, the thing is, and this is a real in the weeds example, but we saw Steve Jensen get promoted. Did you see that?
I did.
So Steve Jensen, people were like, well, how come nobody was crying about him? Because nobody knows what DTOS is. Because if you don't work in the FBI and you're like not a complete nerd who studies org charts, why would you know what the domestic terrorism operations section is in the FBI unless you just have like a real problem? Like maybe you're autistic and that's your thing. But otherwise, you don't know who Steve Jensen is.
Yeah.
But if you know what a section chief is because you've worked in the FBI, you know what that guy does, what he's capable of and where he was. And you know that he doesn't know anything about the pipe bomber case. Because that's like saying a general, it's like a 1-star, knew what was going on in a house that you kicked the door in on. Like maybe he was able to watch the feed, but probably not.
Yeah. So in the past 3 months, in confirmation bias, looking to negatives. And negatives are a dangerous thing. Like if I have a salad and I see a speck of fly shit, the whole salad's ruined. You don't want the salad. I'm not going to pick like that leaf up.
I don't believe you. I think you're eating that salad.
Yeah, I'm not eating. I would eat anything. Look at me.
I got to say, I'm like, I hate that there's a hair in this thing. I'm going to still eat it.
So on the negative side of when you're evaluating something, that it is way more toxic. Like during the election of 2016 and 2020, like Google very wisely, if you Google Trump or Hillary, you'd see a bunch of great things pop up, and you'd see at the top for Trump, like womanizing, grab her by the blank.
Yep.
And that then made the rest of the information that we're going to be see tainted. And that's a dangerous thing in trying to get a kind of holistic, trying to understand a full bell curve, the aggregate, the accumulation of information that we're seeing. But when we have lots of positive examples, they're oftentimes outweighed by the negatives. And I try to, and it's not the way that our media works. We are not being fed any positive stuff.
Agreed.
Like
I only read the left-leaning media. So just for your awareness, like that's what I do. My day involves ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, NPR, MSNBC. I almost never go to any right-leaning sources, and I find a couple of independents every once in a while that I go look into that have stuff of interest. I only want to see what people
your independents. I love finding new independent guys.
Yeah.
But
like I only want to see what people that I don't agree with say. Yeah. So that's my attempt always. And I used to do this when I was an FBI agent. It's like, if I have a case that I think is really righteous, the first thing I want to do is try and disprove my case. Because if I can, so can a defense attorney. That should be my job. That's the process, is like, how do I find exculpatory information to make this not my case anymore, to say that this case is not going to be good enough to prosecute? And when you do it, by the way, it's really satisfying. Like, nothing makes you feel better, at least in my opinion, than realizing that you did your job and you're like, I don't care about outcomes. I care about fairness. So I'm going to go out there and be really fair. And when you do, you're like, cool. Like I tanked this case. Yeah. It's not good anymore. But the thing that I started off believing and the way it was briefed to me is not accurate. And there's evidence of it. And so the evidence destroys the case. Like,
but when you go that right, you end up with, sure, you're not turning in as many investigations, but the one that you're turning in, you're getting crazy awesome conviction rates on.
Well, that's the only thing.
The only thing that matters.
Yeah. And if it's sketchy, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so there's plenty of people. Bill Shipley said this. He was a J6 attorney. He said the government has lost the ability to like be interested in the process, that there should be no interest in the outcome. So we're talking about end states here. That's the thing that management might have. But when it comes to the ground level investigators, all I want is people to go out without any preconceived bias, without anybody leaning on them and say, by the way, you're going to be opening this CT case, or by the way, you're going to be looking into these pro-lifers, or you're going to go out there and sit in the parking lot and write down, license plates of parents who are hanging out at your school or want to, do something like that. Like, I want to see people just go out and find out that it's fair.
Yeah.
And if there's a case there, great.
Yeah.
And, and because there's lots of bad people, there's unlimited bad people. It's not like we have to like go out there and find more.
Yeah,
there's unlimited evil in the world.
In this idea of balancing and objectively taking as much of this information as we can, and how easy it is to look at all of the negatives, the things that aren't happening, the files that aren't being released. What I do see is that they're following law. They're not breaking the law. They're not releasing things they're not supposed to be releasing. They're going through due process. Do I believe that there are embedded operatives that are trying to manipulate the director and the bureau for their own interests and to maintain the status quo? Absolutely. Should they just be like escorted out? No, they should be in appropriate policy and appropriate process within the bureau, by the letter of the law, fired in accordance.
We have that.
And they're doing that, but it doesn't happen in 90 days.
It actually can happen in one day. And I'm going to give you my personal example of it. And there's no reason that you would know this, okay? I went to Congress in October of 2021, and I shared with them information about how the FBI had been abusing FISA. I shared with them stuff about the Afghan refugee camps that we had. We had two different parolee camps, whatever it was, 100,000 in this country, 20,000 in my area of responsibility. We had 20,000 at Bliss and 20,000 at Holloman Air Force Base. And I was investigating like weird crimes of people beating their wife that wasn't really their wife, and people lying about their age and finding out that they were on some sort of watch list, like all this kinds of, biometrics come back, whatever. So we're doing that. And so that was my task. And I brought all this stuff to Congress. I showed them that they created an email saying that they were going to do a threat tag on parents at school boards. And that was real troubling to me because I don't want to see that. I'm a parent, even though my kids were homeschooled. We were actually at an acting academy for 2 weeks and we pulled them out because I didn't like the way that they were doing masking and a bunch of other nonsense in New Mexico.
I had an acting school for 1 year before.
Yeah, my wife sent me a text about it before we started talking. She was like, apparently he had something going on with Acton, but it's no longer associated. And I'm like, I remember hearing a little bit.
I got kicked out. I'm currently being sued by them.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can talk about that another time.
I think we're aligned here.
I just don't like people caving to stuff. So I saw things that I thought were wrong. I brought it to Congress. At the same time, they came and told me you had to get a shot. I said, I'm not going to do that. Mostly because they told me I had to. I don't like people pushing things in my face. And then I realized a lot more things. And so like I'm more on the RFK trip than I was then. A lot of people open their eyes. I was told I couldn't come back into the office. And so I said, well, you're going to have to kick me out. So I showed back up on the Monday. This was on November 23rd of 2021. They kicked me out of the office and said, you can no longer come back in because you don't have a COVID swab every 72 hours. If you don't upload a swab, you're not allowed to be in our physical space. I said, okay. I said, I'm a paramedic and I've been a paramedic for a decade, nationally certified, state certified, FBI certified. And I have a top secret clearance for the last 6.5 years. Okay, dude, like you can't trust me to stay home with the sniffles. So I showed up in the office and my boss is like, dude, did you get a test? And I go, no. And he's like, you got to go home. And I go, okay, but you have to tell me to go home. Like I want you to tell me that I can't be here and do my job. And he was like, come on, dude, come into my office. We spent 2 hours in his office. He told me his wife had COVID, even though she had gotten the shot.
Yeah.
Right. And all the stuff that was doing. And we're just bullshitting like regular dudes. And he's a nice enough guy. He was my neighbor too. So he was like a half mile away. They kicked me out of the office. I'm put on permanent AWOL with no ability to come back until the rules change, which it did. In the middle of February, I think it was like February 9th of 2022, I'm out in the desert. And if anybody's ever lived in a public land state, there's all kinds of open land. It was right next to BLM land. I'm out shooting on one of those steel targets and some other ones that you saw. I'm out shooting in the desert by myself, like in the middle of nowhere. I'm 865 yards with my back to a road. And on the other side of the road is a high school. I'm a half mile. I'm on it. Like, I'm at a lower elevation and I'm shooting into a berm that's 30 feet high. There's no problem.
Yeah.
Cop comes out, talks to me, he goes, hey bro, can you go shoot somewhere else? And I said, I could, but I'm not going to because I'm allowed to be here. And we're standing on shotgun shells. And he's like, people shoot here every day. Like, exactly. I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, no problem. I go, what's the state law say? And he goes, I honestly don't know. And I'm like, it says 150 yards from an occupied structure. I was like, I'll range find that, but I know by eyeball it's over 800. And he was like, no, you're good. So then he left. 3 minutes of body cam was generated. No report. Drives off 10-8, no report. He goes about his day. My boss had me suspended in 1 day for that. They went and said I was unprofessional to a police officer and they pulled my badge and my gun the day after Easter. When they opened the investigation, they opened it on April the, whatever it was, like it was April the 15th and they walked me out on April the 18th. So it got done over a weekend. You know how many things get done in the federal government over a weekend?
Yeah, not often.
Like nothing, especially Easter weekend.
Yeah.
So it can be done very quickly. And I was never allowed to come back in.
Yeah.
And my buddy Garrett O'Boyle had the same thing. So did Steve Friend. So did all the guys. And by the way, we were
everything that you just listed is wrong.
But those are all processes that exist. There's Supreme Court precedent.
But they're wrong processes.
Oh, I don't disagree, but they're processes.
Right. But we want them to do the wrong thing. This is back to like the moral equivalency of like, we're going to be doing the same thing that they were doing, which is wrong in every way. How do we follow the law? How do we follow process and precedent? And then also, how do we morally reconcile? And I don't know how to do this.
And that's what I'm saying. What is the answer to that? Because it's there and it will be used.
But I know these people, and these people I still trust to try and do the right thing. So do I think that they're asking these questions? Do I think like, what mechanisms can we use this process? Can we use this precedent? Can I use Doge? Can I fire this guy for cause because of this? Can we get apps? I think they're doing all of those things, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And is the outcome going to be the outcome that we want? Probably not. Because like, I still want radical.
Right. Do you think we'll get 80% of the outcome? What's an acceptable penetration of our hope versus a realistic output? I said if Donald Trump did 30% of what he said, we'd be winning. And I think we've already won that. So like now I've readjusted. Now I want 60%. Yeah. That seems great to me.
That'd be sick.
Right. If he did 60% of the campaign promises, like America is in way better shape. 30% is a speed bump. 60% is actual change.
We're 120 days in and we're like 20-30% to solution.
I would agree with you across the entire federal government.
Doge has been slowed down. Obviously, DOS, DHS, like Rubio's killing it.
Yep.
He's absolutely
no beef there. Like I say, like I'm more than happy to see wins where I can see wins. I want wins.
Our problem childs, national intelligence, and everything law enforcement related, and those things are unfortunately very intertwined.
Well, that also is probably
that is a problem.
That's a really big problem, and it was not something that Cash was ignorant about when he went in there. You know, I watched him do podcasts with Glenn Beck and some others. I think Sean Ryan. He's like, we need to get the intel component away from the FBI. I've been saying that since I went there. When I started working intel in late 2016, early 2017, I was like, this is a hammer with a screwdriver welded on the end of it. Yeah. It is clunky and awkward for either task. It sucks at doing intelligence because you're bound by the Constitution.
Yeah.
Which you can't do. I mean, you know that. You can't do real intel work and have constitutional boundaries, and you can't do intel work and also be a law enforcement agency. They're incompatible.
Yeah.
Like they're antithetical to each other. So if you put them in the same place, that's Mueller's legacy. That's not even Comey's fault.
Yeah.
You know, that's not even Wray's fault. It's certainly not Cash's fault. But to me, the answer looks like day number one, Tulsi Gabbard, you can have all my IAs and you can have all the intel analysts back. Congratulations. You just got plussed up.
What's the mechanism that does that?
A couple of memorandums. Listen, here's the crazy thing. Every single intel person.
That's a legislative thing.
Every single intel person currently, and I can't remember what the actual code is, but my buddies were former intel analysts. They are all dual tasked. They are paid by the FBI, but they are tasked out by ODNI.
But dual tasked does not mean that budget and that funding, which comes from the legislative body.
I agree.
So like they have to go and pass bills for the things that you just said to happen.
Well, they'd have to pass bills to make them formally, but there can be a look.
The biggest problem in all this.
Have you been loaned out from one?
Absolutely.
So there's an MOU that goes out, a memorandum of understanding.
Solve the problem.
It starts.
It doesn't. And the lame duck in this are the elected people that have a vote, and they're not doing shit.
Agreed. 100% agreement there.
And
like they're passing people by a 51-49 margin, and they're
if we're going to ask like
the home team,
who is leveraged, who is captured, who has been there for how many terms, like we look no further than those elected representatives.
I agree. We're in full agreement on that.
We're like throwing darts at people that the people that we should really be holding accountable are these elected bureaucrats, the elected politicians and embedded bureaucrats that are undermining as operatives against the people that we're talking about.
Yes.
But the people that we're talking about are the people that I trust. And so like, how do we shift the conversation? And like, it's always going to be like, you know, Cash or Tulsi, like, why aren't they doing this? They can't until the power.
Can we put pressure on the elected representatives in a meaningful way that you can think of? Because listen, I'm all about it. Like that's what
it's so much easier to blame the organization, the person at the head of the organization, than it's the person that is responsible, which we need legislative change. And that's
no disagreement. Yeah, these are band-aids. I think they're not solutions, but they are a start, and it starts normalizing the culture of, listen, you don't want intel people. If you had an intel person that was thrown on your team, and you're not thrilled about already because they're not fit and they don't have the ability to keep up, and now they're going to be embedded. They're going to like hang out with you, and you're like, okay, can you do some analysis? We're going to go into this location, so I need some map analysis. We need some SIG in from the area, like whatever the humidity is. Can you do an analysis and give us like tell us what's going on in the area?
Yeah.
Fine, give me some area awareness. And that person goes, oh, I don't do missions. I don't work cases, Kyle. That's an actual conversation that I had. I had a ethnically Chinese American citizen person that I leaned over and said, hey, can you tell me what this is about? And she says, well, I can understand Chinese audibly, but I can't read it. Meanwhile, everything I do is written in Chinese. So I'm like relying on the Bureau's version of Google Translate. And I go, fine, can you explain to me what the context is here? And she looked at me, eye rolled, and said, I don't work cases. And that's the standard. Now, these people can all go to ODNI because they can get an FBI paycheck and not be in the building. And part of the thing, and this is like any company, if you go into a company where, let's say, a third of the people there are on a different mission than what the people in the company are doing, aren't you in trouble? Like that changes culture. That changes the way that things work. It changes the way people talk and they interact, and it changes the mindset. If everybody around me is interested in writing a term paper and they're mad that Kyle Rittenhouse got off because a jury said that it was self-defense, these are real conversations that I've really had, then you're like, that's an uphill battle that I'm willing to have a Band-Aid on it. I'm willing to put those people somewhere else. Like for me,
I don't think they have time to put Band-Aids on things because they're still dealing with significant hemorrhaging of triage of big.
What are those things though? Like what's bigger than personnel in this case? Do you think?
Keeping that house of cards together, because the consequence of it falling down is the opportunity. And we are at war with a few of our peer level adversaries.
Sure.
And those peer level adversaries are waiting with operatives for the opportunity to destabilize. All they want is destabilization. We want security. We want stability, which gives the free market opportunity, the beautiful thing that is democracy to thrive. That can't happen when there's instability, which is why they're trying to destabilize all of our allies. This is why Eastern Europe is a mess. This is why the border was a mess. This is why the whole entire Middle East is a forever mess. They want that. That's what Iran wants. That's what China wants. That's what Russia wants. Mm-hmm. And so I think that first priority is like, okay, I have to keep this ship afloat while I'm repairing it en route to the destination, which is the outcome of a 60% solution that you and I would be happy with. But they're patching massive holes while that ship is going. And
I think the addition to that analogy though, is that they're getting the people, because they're not physically patching the holes.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're delegating that. That's you're giving task and purpose, and you're giving motivation and vision, and then somebody else is going to go out there and they're going to actually enact that mission.
Mm-hmm.
And they're giving it to people that are like, okay, I'm going to stab you in the back here because they haven't been vetted.
Yep.
And so look, I made an argument that there's an advantage to a deputy director that is not an FBI person. It's a really, really small advantage, possibly. It's like a maybe advantage.
Yeah.
Okay. The FBI director always comes in as not an FBI person. So that's fine. No big deal. That's what you want. You want somebody from the outside, vision, understands constitutional principles, good to go. I'm with that. A deputy, there's only one possibility that you bring in a deputy that doesn't have a connection to the FBI and doesn't know like what all the things, doesn't know what DTOS is, doesn't know what ITOS is, doesn't know, where these little missions, and boondoggles are. Because there's a lot of boondoggles in the Bureau. And the only advantage to having that person is that they're going to come in and wrecking ball, no loyalty to anybody. The danger is that person says, I don't know what I don't know. And in order to know what I need to know, I've got to ask people that I haven't been able to vet because I have no one to trust. I don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
And then you're in a real bad spot where you're basically leaning on people that there's no, you in the case of Dan Bongino, he spent 8 years railing against them not being trustworthy. And now he's got to go in there, not only trust them, he's going to have to defend them publicly, which is catastrophic for people's confidence.
Yeah.
I watched him do it this morning and I went like, I don't want him to be in that position. I can take cheap shots. I don't think they're cheap shots. I'm like, I literally do not want you in a scenario where you have to trust people that you have no business trusting, where you are going to have to rely on intel with hope. Because that's hope is a terrible plan.
It is. Yeah.
It's the worst case scenario. And so the only way that I see this working, again, the local tour guide, you find somebody that's been on the other end of it. Like the upside of a Tulsi Gabbard is that she had a weaponized government come after her. I think we mentioned it yesterday, right? She got surveilled by the air marshals, proven, factually accurate, like whistleblowers and documents to back it up. I was surveilled by those same air marshals. I ran it by one of my friends who's an air marshal. She was like 100%. She goes, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're an 11 getting watched. And like I ID'd who the guys were. You've done, counter surveillance. Yeah. You know how to pick those guys up. When you do surveillance for a living, you can find your tail. It's not that hard, especially if they aren't expected to look for you. So I found 2 guys. I thought it was possibly 3, but I saw at least the 2 that were following me into the airport when I flew to move my household goods out of New Mexico. And so when you've been on the end of it, and I think that's the upside of looking at Tulsi Gabbard, I was always kind of on the fence with her just because I don't know her personally.
Yeah.
And
she's incredible.
She went from guns are bad MK to like, I'm in the tactical games. And I'm like,
Yeah.
And then I read her thing. She put out a Substack and I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. You're allowed to have a growth moment. And I'm,
My favorite part about all of that transformation was the transparency and vulnerability of it.
It's hard to walk away from like a whole camp of people that supported you
Yeah.
and say you're all wrong.
And they tried to bankrupt her campaign.
Yep.
They the government as a whole obviously weaponized and then attacked her.
Yep.
She ended Kamala's first run, and since then,
with one sort of like soundbite, devastating.
So she has been like enemy number one for a really, really long time, and it wasn't because they had attacked her that this revelation happened. I really think that she, through learned what are the catalysts of change? Pain, adversity, challenges. So she faced some significant ones, and then it transformed who she was. And ultimately we have what is a remarkably different person than from 10 years ago, a woman that loves the Constitution, that swore to protect the Constitution, that has been the victim of a weaponized government from the intelligence community and from the Department of Justice and from the Department of Homeland Security. And now she's on a roll. Let's look at RFK, the exact same. And I think if we look at Bongino and we look at Patel, you see also guys that were attacked post last. So when they were in the 16 to 20 administration, well, not Bongino, but Cash, you see a man that like, when we first got to the special forces teams, I'd see these guys with gray hair, the gray hair operators.
Yeah, the gray beards.
Yeah, like these guys are so old and they're so useless. Those
are the most dangerous guys in the room.
And to me, they lived through some highs, and then, man, they experienced some serious lows where they're being attacked. Now they're back in positions with 8-10 years of being public enemy number one from camps of the people that they are currently representing and advising and directing as superiors, as directors and as secretaries.
Yeah, like,
how do you do this?
You have to do it with unbelievable skepticism. You can't trust anybody.
Yeah.
So the only way you do it is you get other people that have had the same kind of experience of. So you mentioned something about Tulsi Gabbard that I think it resonates strongly with me. When you first swear the oath to the Constitution, how many times you sworn in?
I don't know.
Over and over again, right?
Yeah. A couple dozen.
And you swear in, and you're like, what are you swearing to? Like, what are you saying that you're going to defend? What does that thing mean? Because the Constitution is an abstract, and I would say most enlisted people have probably not even read the Constitution.
Yeah.
Just being around enlisted, guys.
I got one in my truck. I got one in my shop. I got one in my
I had one in my gun bag whenever I took it on a trip. Like, it went with me when I went on TDYs as an agent, and like but I don't think I really appreciated it until sometime when I was actually doing the job, when I realized that as a law enforcement guy, and I think it's different from the military, but in the law enforcement context, your oath to the Constitution is really to the Bill of Rights, because you represent the ability to infringe on all the things. That's what you are. You are like the long arm of the law, ready to reach in, take people's freedom, take their privacy, right? Yep. So your job as a sworn law enforcement person, and that happens at every level, state, federal, local, doesn't matter. You're saying, I will protect freedom of speech. I will recognize that it's God-given and that the government has a limit, and therefore I will limit myself and my peers, right?
Yeah.
And then I think
limit myself and my peers. It's not something the Bureau has been very good at.
No, they're terrible at it. Like, that's the whole problem. So you're surrounded by those guys. And then you've got people that have been talking about it, understand the danger. I think a Tulsi Gabbard probably gets it. And the DOD side of things, I think your job is that you are protecting the Article 1 powers of Congress to go out there and do their job. You're protecting the Article 2 powers of the executive to do that job. You're making sure that no foreign enemy comes in and subverts the meat of the Constitution that runs the government. So you're the outward sort of sword and shield. The inside animal is how you police the government itself.
To include foreign and domestic.
It is. I think people are more and more aware that the domestic end of it means holding those accountable that have decided to subvert those authorities. Like we've seen examples in the last couple of years of DOD, like and any other, like DOJ, like they're running the show. You got people, and that's the whole concept of the D state, is it not? I mean, that's people that said, well, I outlast presidents. I'm going to be here and they're not.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do whatever I want. And by the way, I know better. And they probably think they do. And sometimes they probably actually do.
Yeah.
But that's not what our country is about.
No, I mean, in the DOD facing inward, that should be a last resort. Absolutely.
Sure.
But currently on Title 10 orders here in Texas, we see them protecting our sovereign borders. We have legitimate military missions that are approved with Title 10 funds, which where does Title 10 money come from?
Congress.
Congress.
Oh, sure.
Yet again, like you fall responsibility back to like you want to see legislative change. You're going to have to look to Congress for that to happen.
I'd like to see Congress take back their power and be the preeminent branch of our government.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
that's
it's supposed
me.
to be equally balanced between the three.
Well, look at the order they put him in, and they didn't do it on accident. The judiciary was anemic on purpose. It's a referee. The executive is the one that pulls out and executes the plans thereof and has some like real strong authorities outside the country. But at the end of the day, power of the purse is the ultimate funding mechanism. Like, that's the animal.
Yeah.
So my contention is that Congress is supposed to be the preeminent branch, and that's the way that they drafted it, knowing that, and that the executive was never supposed to have that authority. They just threw a king off. Like, it wasn't like they were looking to make another king, right?
Yeah. But they were scared of the bureaucrats that existed in England, the Whigs. So that balance and the check and balances from our Supreme Court and our executive branch to the legislative branch, all of them were supposed to have, again, levers.
They had levers against each other, but I don't know that they were co-equal per se.
Yeah.
I think that we got taught that as a kid, and I don't think that's necessarily true because some of them are stronger. But what I do think is that we have lost the power that Congress is supposed to have. Like, they gave a lot of it away. If you've ever seen what executive agencies can do, you can't have a deep state unless they have Chevron doctrine, which we just got reversed. Like, that was a big one.
Yeah.
Like, that was a big deal.
Yep.
And then we have the last sort of ugly piece there is the Administrative Procedures Act, which is what the ATF uses to a weaponized fashion.
Yeah.
They write their opinion and decide that that's law.
Yeah.
And they let you comment on it. So if
Here's
Tim
a
doesn't
policy. Your suppressor has to be, going through this form. It has to pass. Get out.
And by the way, if you happen to own a lathe, now you own the means to build a suppressor. So the lathe is also a suppressor because we just made it up.
God,
Like, they're the
abolish.
they're like
Back to abolish.
yeah.
I gotta get kids from school get kids to their practices in not too long.
Yeah. All right. So give me a wrap up summation. Do you think is the answer more time? Is that your current position?
I want nonstop pressure from the collective of, I think we have a bunch of people that are like, hey, November was awesome. Let's count that as a win.
We do.
And I was like, you're insane.
That's the coin toss.
We are in the middle of a fight right now, and I don't know which way the weight is going. That coin is flying in the air. And unless we have a bunch of people with the pressure that made the election in November have the outcome that it had, if those people don't start participating, so the election process happened, but the implementation of what the election is about is currently going on. And that constant pressure, holding people accountable, getting confirmations approved, getting their representatives to be fighting for bills that are like the big, beautiful bill, there's elements in there that every single constitutionalist should be like, oh my God, I'm going to fight for this. I'm going to be calling for them not to get this portion cut out of it. But nobody read it. Nobody cared.
Yeah. Where's my short act?
What is that? And so like there's no greater insult than indifference. And I think a lot of people now are currently indifferent to what's happening. So I want them to come back to the table and start pressuring significant, and that can be directors and that can be secretaries, but that can also be elected officials. And the Patriot, which is funny that became a negative insult for a group of people. We're like, oh, he's a patriot. Oh, you mean he's a mega person? No, he's a patriot, and he's fighting for this beautiful country, the most beautiful thing that's existed in the course of humanity. I need them back, and I need them to continue to support and fight the people that the president that was elected, appointed, and got confirmed into these positions, and then start supporting these people to get to the end state that we so desperately want. But if we are attacking, if we are not, there's nothing wrong with holding somebody accountable, making sure that our expectations are understood and heard. But I still have faith that this cabinet is fighting with the best interests of what the president wanted, and his vision and his values are still being fought for. And we have some wins, but nowhere near the wins that we want. And
what's your degree of confidence that we've got what's your degree of confidence that they're going to be able to achieve where we're at? And Intel people, they always give me like the high, medium, low.
Yeah.
You know, some degree in there. I don't know, scale of 1 to 5. Where are you feeling like your confidence sits based on having a lot more personal access to some of these folks?
Man, they're just not going to quit. Like, you had to kill President Trump. You had to.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And they tried.
They did.
Like JD Vance, bro, you're gonna have to kill that guy. Like, that guy's never gonna quit. The dude survived like poverty that nobody's gonna understand, abuse that nobody's gonna understand, and you know, like,
that's been completely written off. They act like he's like this elite guy, and then you hear him tell a story about how he didn't know how to pronounce like Chardonnay, and he tried to order some wine that he thought he could pronounce because he was surrounded. He was completely outclassed. Like that is lost on people on the left who somehow should be celebrating that. You'd think.
But they're not.
No.
You're gonna have to kill Tulsi because that girl's gonna fight to the day she dies. Like, Hegseth, the dude's a gem. And I think the Cashes and the Bonginos, and like, you'll have to kill RFK. You're gonna have to, because that guy's gonna keep fighting. He's been doing it his whole life, and then he was despised and betrayed by his own party and his family.
And they wouldn't give him a security detail.
No,
which I'm hearing the same thing about Tulsi at the moment, that they're not giving a security detail over there, and there's been this ongoing fight.
Yeah.
So it's like,
so.
But again, these are inside these agencies that we're supposed to, like, how do you trust people if the entire agency is not even going to do like their job of providing a protective detail?
Yeah.
I also thought that we were getting a tough guy in a deputy director, and he didn't need a protective detail because they've never had one before. I get, like, you don't roll around with a detail. You got a high profile.
Yeah.
I mean, you're more of a killer than Dan is, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. He scares me sometimes. You know, when he leans in with that big forehead, I'm like,
he does have a lot of forehead.
Yeah.
But you know what? He told me something. He said one time, he was like, when I go to the gym, I always carry like 3 guns. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
That's too many guns. That's too many guns.
You should just have magazines, man.
Yeah.
You should hold on to your gun, whatever that is. Maybe he's got that New York reload mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be back in DC in a couple of weeks for the Army birthday.
Okay.
And
how old will the Army be?
The Army will be 250 years old.
Same as our country.
Yep. And
happy birthday, Army.
Yeah. That week, Sergeant Major of the Army, he's a graybeard.
Yep.
Long in the tooth. 7 Special Forces group guy, went to the unit.
Still counts?
Oh, yeah.
You went to the unit. So
then went to the unit.
Got it.
It's like extra counts.
Got it.
And like, arguably one of the greatest leaders of this the entire global war on terror. Like, the dude is just like, I'd follow him to the gates of hell. He's not young. He's going to be like out on the mall lawn doing the new Army PT test in his 50s, because he leads from the front.
That's how you do it.
That is how you do it. And I think that is a fair representation across, just like we see Secretary Hegseth working out with dudes in the morning. You know, we see Dakota Meyer, Medal of Honor recipient, who's a local, like re-enlisting.
Is he local here?
He is. I'll absolutely connect you.
I met him once at SHOT Show 2 years ago. I actually saw you stand up on a chair and give a big speech.
Dude's a gem.
In a bar at the same time. Yeah, he always seemed like
he is. He's the real deal.
Yep.
And
like a regular person.
100%. And going back in his late 30s to do not easy stuff. Like, he didn't like do this to get a moment of fame. Like,
no.
he did it because he believes.
And he enlisted, didn't he? Like,
that's right.
What rank
back
did he
to
take?
his original rank,
which was what, E4?
No, E5.
E5.
Yeah.
Not in my 30s.
No.
I got out of my 30s as an E3, so just, you know.
So like, I just looked like all of this awesome, and not that that's the cross section, not that that's, but like, that's what I'm looking to, is all of, they're still doing the work, and they are going to do it until they, like I said, you'll have to kill them to stop them. And that's why I have faith I know that was a really long answer to a really simple question. I don't have like a high, medium, low.
No, it's not a short answer is the thing.
And that gives me the confidence and hope. I know hope's not a plan, that they're going to keep on fighting. And if I'm useful, I'm going to keep fighting. Like, I want the power to be back to the family and be back to the state, to be back. It's like, we're just going to keep on keeping on until you kill us.
It may come to that.
Yeah.
Like, I keep waiting. Somebody said that's a Fed statement. I'm like, no, that's just reality, man.
Yeah.
I watched what this country rolled over for.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it. Like, we saw it in our lifetime. That's not something people have been able to say
I'm
for
so grateful that we did, though.
Me too.
Like, I remember.
I think that's one of God's biggest gifts.
How did that little girl that was hiding in the attic how were the neighbors going to betray a little girl that was writing in her diary during World War II? And then I saw it in the United States in 2020, 2021, 2022.
Everybody who understood what the story was that was happening at the time all drew analogies directly back to what people were willing to do. This is the story of ordinary men, right? So you can read the book, or you can just know that like ordinary men will follow orders because it's convenient, because they have a paycheck, because they have a pension, because they are not trying to upset their apple cart in their life. And, we'll just kill people because why would we stand up for something and have to maybe find a new job?
Yeah.
And a lot of people did that. But it did reveal a couple things. One, we saw who the diamonds in the rough are. Like we immediately revealed like all the sand and saw what was underneath. So you saw some treasure. We also got to see the rules got changed while we were watching them. It's one thing to think that someone's like scamming you. It's another thing to see someone scam you and do the sleight of hand.
Yeah.
And we watched that goalpost move like in real time.
I love that I got to see how they did it, because now I know their moves. Like I can't wait for them to try it again, because all of us that were paying attention, like I saw how you did this.
Yep.
And you ever try this again, we're coming after you.
I told people you got to draw a line in the sand, know what it is, and never give any ground on it ever again. Like we're at the back, our backs are whatever it is, whatever the back is, probably like a hole in the ground. So that's what they'll shoot us into.
You're a gem, Kyle.
I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
Well,
we got a lot to talk about, I think.
we do. And I'm looking forward to, I want to know next time. And so this will give you something to think as you leave the door. When are you going to start? When would you start getting concerned that we need to start pushing different types of pressure? So
good question.
Something to chew on, something to think about. That's not a light question. So I'll have you do that. And that's where we're going to end it for today.
Awesome.
Tim Kennedy, you want to tell people where the best place, where you like people to follow you?
God, I hate social media.
It's just awful, but it's necessary. So where do people communicate with you best?
At Tim Kennedy MMA across the social channels. Yep. It's verified, because there, I think like yesterday, there's 200 or 300 of them. And anyways, at Tim Kennedy MMA, verified accounts.
Right. Do you have open crazy contact where people can reach out to you too, or no?
Not really. I mean, like
you'll get
the
less mental
medias.
illness.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you're listening to this and you have a mental illness, post it under Tim's handles wherever and tag me too so I can see it.
Yeah. Appreciate you, dude.
All right, bud. Thanks.
And you have been listening to the Sunday Sit Down on the Kyle Seraphin Show with Tim Kennedy. Love him or hate him, there's a lot of people that feel very strongly about him. Tim is always welcome back at my house. Like I said, it started off with a handshake, it ended with a hug. And within 90 seconds of the man being inside the doors of my home, stripped down to Ranger panties and was changing into something comfortable. That is a man who is comfortable in all environments, including here. And so I was really happy to host him. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And if you didn't like it, or if you did like it, or if there's something that concerns you, if you agree or you disagree, go ahead and drop me a comment. You can do so in the comments on any of the places that we run this, and we run it over on Rumble, so you guys can leave us one there. It's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Make sure you've liked the show before you leave. Same story over on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, it's youtube.com/@Kyle Seraphin to find the homepage. Give us a comment. Give me a question, a comment, or a sarcastic remark. You can do all three if you're so inclined. If you want to get the show a day early, you can do so on Locals at KyleSeraphin.com. It's available to all of our paid subscribers. Costs you $5 a month or $50 for the year if you want to be out there. It just supports us and what we're doing. And lastly, if you want to see the show on Spotify, if you want to share with a friend, you can send them the link, and it's KyleSeraphinShow.com. It's quite easy to find. It's very easy to share. You literally just type that sucker in and send it over, and they can get the video or the audio as they choose. And those go live on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The rest of the shows go live at 09:30 Eastern Time. They are all done live from this little set here that you see. The Kyle Seraphin Show is 100% run by me, and it is funded by you and your eyeballs and your interest in our sponsors. So make sure you're supporting our sponsors. Thanks so much for being part of the program. I hope you have a fantastic weekend or rest of the week whenever you are listening to this. God bless you. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.